An increase of data centers and artificial intelligence has some Texans concerned about power usage. That's why some developers are now turning to building their own gas-fired power plants. Baddour joins us now after looking more into this for Inside Climate News. Dylan, welcome and thanks for being with us.
Thank you.
Let's start by talking about how much power these data centers use. What do they require?
They require huge amounts of power. The largest of them can use as much power or more than a large city. And small ones can use as much power as thousands of average homes.
And you had reported that some of these developers who are building these kinds of operations are maybe even turning to their own independent sources of power. What did you find?
Yep, well, with so many data centers proposed across the state, our grid can't keep up with that growth. It can't add enough power generation to match all those data centers. So, in fact, officials in Texas have encouraged data center developers to build their own power plants, which private power plants exist, but it's a rising trend.
And why are these developers looking at other sources of power besides renewables?
Well, renewables work best when they're in the grid because they're intermittent, which means they don't generate energy all the time. So they work best as part of a diversified system. Just by itself, they can't really power a data center, at least not with current battery technology. That's why many developers are looking back to natural gas, which was popular more so in previous decades to fuel these new computing facilities.
You touched on it a few moments ago, but what kind of connection do these potential independent power plants have to the state's wider grid?
In many cases, they won't be connected. In some cases, the power plants will be connected and provide a small amount of energy to the grid and a large amount of energy to private customers. But really, the whole impetus here is that the grid can't handle so much load growth, so they are moving these data centers onto private energy systems.
Well, checking out your reporting about this, some here in Central Texas are concerned about these gas plants possibly causing pollution near their own homes. What did you learn about that?
Yeah, it's bad news for residents who live next to them. By and large, this build out is happening in rural places where land is cheap. So folks out there are unhappy about getting, very loud, heavy industrial presence right nearby their home. Many of these plants emit large amounts of soot, as well as other chemicals and large amounts of greenhouse gases. Even now, as every year continues to be warmer than the next, we're going to increase our output of greenhouse gases here.
Is the pushback these neighbors are putting out there, is it having any kind of impact on these projects moving forward?
In some cases, it can slow them down if they can get the projects to be reviewed by administrative courts. But in the most cases, there's not a ton of power that neighbors and citizens have to slow these things down, at least in Texas, where we're very pro-development and pro-growth.
Well, Dylan Baddour will wrap up our conversation there, but you all can read his reporting on Inside Climate News. Dylan, thanks again for joining us. We appreciate that.
Thanks for having me.